1 month later, Captain Lisa Harrington sat in her office at United Nations Space Command Headquarters, reviewing reports on her computer screen. A soft knock at her door made her look up. "Come in," she called. General Frank Martinez entered, holding a datapad. His face wore an unusual expression, something between amusement and concern. "You've seen it?" he asked without preamble. Lisa nodded. "The Arcturian report to the Galactic Council. It came through diplomatic channels an hour ago." "What do you make of it?" Martinez sat down across from her. Lisa leaned back in her chair. "It's not what anyone expected, that's for sure." The report from Ambassador Sklorth had arrived that morning, detailing his evaluation of humanity's readiness to join the Galactic Council. Instead of the dry technical assessment everyone anticipated, the document read more like a warning. "Humans are terrifyingly resilient," Lisa quoted from memory. "They possess incomprehensible willingness to endure suffering and display dangerously altruistic behavior in combat situations." Martinez smiled slightly. "My favorite part is where he describes our training as deliberately traumatic to create warriors with pain thresholds that defy biological logic." "What surprises me most is his recommendation," Lisa said. "I was certain after his hasty departure that he would vote against our membership." The general nodded. "Instead, he strongly recommended our immediate acceptance into the council. Not because he thinks we deserve it, but because he believes it's safer to keep us contained through diplomatic engagement rather than potential conflict." Lisa finished. Their conversation was interrupted by another knock. A junior officer entered and saluted. "Captain, the Trillarian ambassador is requesting to speak with you. He says it's about the Arcturian report." Lisa exchanged glances with Martinez. The Trillarians were one of the few alien species who had maintained friendly relations with humans since first contact. "Send him in," Lisa said. Ambassador Noor of Trillaria was a short, stocky alien with iridescent scales and 4 eyes. Unlike the Arcturians, his species had evolved on a high-gravity world and found Earth quite comfortable. "Captain Harrington." Noor greeted her warmly. "I thought you might appreciate some context for what's happening in the council chambers today." "Please, Ambassador, have a seat." Lisa gestured to a chair. "What can you tell us?" Noor settled his bulky frame into the chair. "Sklorth's report has caused quite a stir. Several species who previously opposed Earth's membership are now voting in favor of it. Because they're afraid of us," Martinez said flatly. "Not afraid," Noor corrected. "Respectful. And yes, perhaps a bit cautious. Sklorth's description of human military cadets has made quite an impression." Lisa frowned. "We didn't show him anything extraordinary, just standard training." "That's exactly what terrifies them," Noor said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "What you consider standard would be considered extreme by most council species." He pulled out a small device and placed it on Lisa's desk. A hologram appeared showing the council chamber during the vote on Earth's membership. "The final vote was 93% in favor," Noor said. "An unprecedented majority." Martinez leaned forward. "All because one jumpy ambassador got scared watching some cadets run an obstacle course." "Not just that," Noor replied. "The final line of Sklorth's report has become famous throughout the council. It's been translated into 27 languages already." "Which line?" Lisa asked. Noor's translation device spoke in his voice. "The species that calls its training basic is anything but. May we never discover what humans consider advanced." A moment of silence fell over the room as Lisa and Martinez absorbed the implications. So Lisa said finally, "We're being accepted into the Galactic Council because they're too nervous to reject us." "Precisely," Noor confirmed. "Your West Point Academy accomplished more for human diplomacy in one day than our diplomats have achieved in decades." General Martinez laughed suddenly. "If they think our Academy cadets are impressive, let's hope they never meet our Marines." "One step at a time, General," Lisa said with a small smile. "Let's not terrify our new allies too quickly." Outside her window, The sun shone on the United Nations Space Command headquarters as, across the galaxy, humanity's position in interstellar politics shifted dramatically, not despite their warrior culture, but because of it. The final stop on the Academy tour was the Space Warfare Simulation Center. Located in the newest building on campus, it featured a mock starship bridge complete with control stations, holographic displays, and a main view screen showing simulated space. "This is where our Space Command cadets train," Captain Lisa Harrington explained as the alien delegation entered. "They learn to make quick decisions during crisis situations." Sklorth moved cautiously into the room, his tall frame seeming to hunch slightly as if carrying an invisible weight. His aides stayed close behind him, their movements more nervous than they had been that morning. "The Arcturian Confederation has similar training facilities," the ambassador said, trying to sound normal, "though ours focus on diplomatic solutions rather than military responses." "We train for both," Lisa replied. "Today's simulation will demonstrate how cadets handle an impossible situation where every choice has consequences." A group of cadets entered the room and took their positions at different stations. A young man with steady hands and calm eyes sat in the captain's chair. His name badge read Cadet Kevin Anderson. "Ambassador," Lisa said, "this is our top Space Command cadet. He'll be leading today's exercise." Sklorth nodded politely to the human. "What scenario will you face today, Cadet Anderson?" "We don't know, sir," Anderson replied. "The instructors create unique scenarios for each simulation. We have to respond in real time, just like in actual space service." The lights dimmed, and the simulation began. On the main screen, a starfield appeared with a small planet in the distance. The cadets went through standard procedures, calling out system status and coordinates. Suddenly, alarms blared. Emergency signal from civilian transport in Sector 4 called out a female cadet at communications. "They're under attack by unknown vessels." "On screen," Anderson ordered. The view screen showed a civilian ship being fired upon by 3 smaller, faster vessels. The transport's shields were failing rapidly. "Distance to intercept?" Anderson asked. 4 minutes at maximum speed, sir," replied the helmsman. "Tactical analysis," Anderson called out. A cadet at the weapons station responded. 3 hostile ships, heavily armed. "Our weapons can handle them, but we can't reach the civilian transport before their shields fail." Anderson thought for just a second. "Plot intercept course, maximum speed." As the simulation progressed, it became clear that the civilian transport would be destroyed before Anderson's ship could arrive. "Unless—" "New plan," Anderson said firmly. "We'll drop out of warp directly between the attackers and the transport. Use our ship as a shield while evacuating the civilians." "Sir," the tactical officer objected, "placing our vessel in that position will expose us to concentrated fire from all 3 hostile ships. Our shields won't hold." "Understood," Anderson replied without hesitation. "Proceed with the plan." The alien delegation watched in growing alarm as the cadets carried out orders that would likely result in their simulated deaths. On screen, Anderson's ship dropped out of warp, placing itself directly in the line of fire. The hostile ships immediately began firing on them. "Shield strength dropping," called out one cadet. 40%, 30%. "Continue civilian evacuation," Anderson ordered calmly. "Divert power from weapons to shields and life support." Sklorth could remain silent no longer. "Cadet Anderson, you have chosen a course of action that will likely destroy your vessel." "Why?" Anderson turned briefly from the simulation. "There are 800 civilians on that transport, sir. My crew is 75. The math is simple." "But you will die," the ambassador said, his translator struggling to convey his disbelief. "Maybe," Anderson replied, "but not before completing our mission." He turned back to the simulation as the ship shuddered under another attack. "Civilian evacuation status. 60% complete, sir," came the response. Sklorth stepped back, breathing rapidly. He grasped the arm of his aide. They're not even real civilians, he whispered urgently. This is just a simulation. Yet he chooses destruction without hesitation. Shield failure in 30 seconds, announced a cadet. Hold position, Anderson ordered. Every second we give them is another life saved. The ambassador's large eyes darted from the calm face of Cadet Anderson to the determined expressions of the other cadets. None showed fear. None objected to their impending simulated deaths. Suddenly, Sklorth stepped away from the simulation. I must return to my ship, he announced abruptly. Urgent diplomatic matters require my attention. Captain Harrington looked surprised. But, Ambassador, we haven't completed the tour. I have seen enough, Sklorth said, his voice shaking slightly. More than enough. After leaving the Psychological Assessment Center, the group moved to a large lecture hall where rows of empty seats faced the central stage. A woman with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes waited for them there, standing beside a holographic projector. Ambassador Sklorth, this is Dr. Elizabeth Franklin, our Academy historian, Captain Lisa Harrington said. She'll be giving you some context about human warfare through history. A pleasure to meet you, Ambassador, Dr. Franklin said. I thought understanding our past might help you understand our present approach to military training. The alien leader nodded slowly. Yes, historical context is always valuable. The aliens took seats in the front row, their tall frames looking awkward in chairs designed for humans. Dr. Franklin dimmed the lights and activated the holographic display. Human warfare has evolved over thousands of years, she began. From simple tribal conflicts to the global wars of the 20th century and the space conflicts of recent decades. The hologram showed ancient warriors with spears and shields, then soldiers with muskets, then modern troops with advanced weapons. Sklorth watched with growing interest. Unlike some species who evolved beyond physical conflict, humans have instead developed ethical frameworks for warfare, Dr. Franklin explained. Rules that govern when and how we fight. Interesting, Sklorth said. You created rules for killing each other. We created boundaries, she corrected. Ways to maintain our humanity even in our darkest moments. The historian continued, displaying footage from historical battles. What's remarkable about human warfare isn't the violence itself, but the courage and sacrifice we've shown throughout history. The hologram changed to show a soldier carrying a wounded comrade across a battlefield while under fire. Another clip showed a pilot steering a damaged aircraft away from a populated area instead of ejecting to safety. These individuals knew they would likely die, Dr. Franklin said softly. Yet they chose to save others at the cost of their own lives. Ambassador Sklorth leaned forward. They chose certain death. Willingly? Yes, Lisa answered. It happens more often than you might think. The alien leader's fingers twitched. In Arcturian society, self-preservation is considered the highest logical imperative. No rational being would choose certain death. Humans often do, Dr. Franklin said. We have a saying, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. The hologram showed more examples. Medics treating wounded soldiers while exposed to enemy fire, troops forming human chains to rescue civilians from floods, astronauts sacrificing themselves to save their crews during space disasters. This behavior defies logical analysis, Sub-Ambassador Vertix whispered to Sklorth. It cannot be predicted or countered. Dr. Franklin continued her presentation, unaware of the growing unease among the alien visitors. Our military academies don't just teach fighting techniques. They teach loyalty, sacrifice, and the willingness to put others before oneself. She showed footage of cadets helping each other through difficult obstacles, sharing water during desert training, carrying each other's equipment when someone was struggling. The strength of human military forces isn't our technology or even our physical capabilities, she explained. It's the bonds between our people. We fight hardest not for ourselves, but for those beside us. Sklorth's breathing had become noticeably faster. And this willingness to die for others, it is common among humans. It's what we aspire to, Lisa said simply. Not everyone achieves it, but many do when the moment comes. Dr. Franklin ended her presentation with footage of a small group of soldiers holding off a much larger enemy force to allow civilians time to escape a conflict zone. The soldiers fought until they were overwhelmed, but by then, the civilians had reached safety. We honor such sacrifices, Dr. Franklin said as the lights came back on. Not because we glorify death, but because we value life so highly that some consider certain lives worth dying for. Sklorth stared at the now blank hologram projector for a long moment before speaking. Your species is unlike any we have encountered in the galaxy. This mixture of violence and self-sacrifice is difficult for us to comprehend. We're complicated, Lisa acknowledged with a small smile. Like most species, I imagine. No, the ambassador said softly. Not like most species at all. The Psychological Assessment Center was housed in a modern building with large windows overlooking the academy grounds. Dr. Samuel Brooks, a man in his 50s with kind eyes that somehow seemed to see through people, greeted the delegation at the entrance. Welcome, Ambassador Sklorth. I understand you're interested in how we evaluate and build mental resilience in our cadets, Dr. Brooks said, extending his hand. The alien ambassador gave a weak handshake. Yes, Doctor. Mental development is something my species values highly. Excellent. Please, follow me. Dr. Brooks led them into a room with screens showing brain scans and psychological profiles. At West Point, we believe that mental toughness is just as important as physical strength, if not more so. Sklorth nodded, seeming more comfortable with this topic. This is an area where our species might find common ground. We start with basic stress testing, Dr. Brooks explained, pointing to a screen showing a cadet in a small chamber. This cadet is undergoing what we call sensory deprivation training. They're isolated in that chamber for 24 hours with minimal stimuli. To what purpose? Asked Vertix, the sub-ambassador. To help them understand their mental limits and learn to cope with isolation. Dr. Brooks replied. In combat situations, a soldier might be cut off from their unit or held as a prisoner of war. They need to be prepared. The aliens exchanged glances. You prepare them for capture by enemies? Sklorth asked slowly. Captain Lisa Harrington nodded. We hope it never happens, but we prepare for all possibilities. Dr. Brooks moved them to another screen showing cadets standing in cold water up to their chests. This is part of our stress inoculation training. Exposure to controlled adversity builds tolerance for more extreme conditions later. You deliberately cause them discomfort. Sklorth's large eyes blinked rapidly. As part of education, controlled discomfort, Dr. Brooks corrected. The body and mind adapt to stress when exposed to it regularly. We call it getting comfortable being uncomfortable. The aliens watched silently as the screen showed more images. Cadets navigating difficult problems with minimal sleep, enduring loud noises while trying to complete complex tasks, and working together under artificially created high-pressure situations. And they volunteer for this treatment. Vertix asked, his translator unable to hide his disbelief. Not only volunteer, Lieutenant Commander Gregory Howard said as he joined the group, but many compete for spots in our most demanding programs. I oversee selection for our advanced training divisions. Sklorth turned to the new human. Advanced training. More demanding than what we've seen. Howard laughed. Oh, what you've seen today is nothing compared to Special Forces selection. Those men and women go without sleep for days, march carrying heavy equipment for miles, and solve complex problems while physically and mentally exhausted. Several alien aides made clicking sounds that their translators didn't convert. Lisa recognized it as their expression of shock or alarm. Ambassador, Dr. Brooks continued, seemingly unaware of the aliens' growing discomfort. We found that humans have remarkable psychological resilience when properly trained. Our studies show that the mind can overcome almost any physical limitation when motivated by the right factors. And what factors motivate humans to endure such trials? Sklorth asked. Loyalty to each other, Mostly, Howard answered simply. The drive not to let down your team is stronger than almost any physical pain. Dr. Brooks nodded. We've recorded brain activity during extreme stress tests. When cadets are told their performance affects their teammates, their tolerance for discomfort increases by nearly 60%. Sklorth was silent for a long moment. Your species willingly accepts pain. For each other. Of course, Lisa said. Wouldn't yours? The ambassador didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Dr. Brooks. These tests you've shown us, are they the most extreme examples? Oh no, Brooks replied. I couldn't show you the survival training footage. It's classified. But that's where cadets really learn their limits, or rather, learn that their perceived limits aren't really limits at all. Sklorth's long fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted his breathing apparatus. I believe I understand your species better now, Doctor. Much better than I did this morning. No one in the room missed the new note of caution in the alien ambassador's voice. The alien delegation followed Captain Lisa Harrington to a large indoor training facility. Through reinforced glass windows, they could see cadets preparing in a room designed to look like the inside of a building. The cadets wore protective gear and carried what looked like weapons. This is our combat simulation center, Professor William Carter explained as he met them at the entrance. I oversee tactical training at the academy. Ambassador Sklorth studied the professor with his large eyes. These weapons your students hold, they are not real. They fire non-lethal training rounds, Professor Carter said. The rounds leave a paint mark and cause a small sting on impact. Nothing serious. You intentionally allow your students to shoot each other. One of the alien aides asked, the translator struggling to convey his tone of horror. How else would they learn proper combat techniques? Sergeant Olivia Grant replied as if the question was strange. The aliens watched as two teams of cadets took positions on opposite sides of the mock building. At a signal, they began moving with surprising speed, communicating through hand signals and quick whispers. When they encountered each other, they fired their training weapons without hesitation. Sklorth flinched as he watched a cadet get hit in the chest with several paint rounds. The cadet dropped to one knee, then rolled behind cover and continued firing. The cadet was struck, the ambassador said, pointing. Yet he continues to fight. Of course, Professor Carter replied. In real combat, you don't stop because of a minor injury. You complete the mission. The alien leader's fingers nervously tapped against his translation device. In Arcturian society, any form of physical combat has been outlawed for centuries. We find it difficult to understand this willingness to endure harm. Lisa nodded. Different evolutionary paths, Ambassador. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a dangerous planet. Physical resilience is part of our nature. The simulation continued for 15 more minutes. Cadets moved with growing intensity, rushing into rooms, diving for cover, and engaging in close quarters fighting. When the exercise ended, the winning team celebrated briefly before both groups gathered for a debriefing. That was sloppy, Lewis. Major Patricia Duncan called out to one cadet. You exposed your position too early. In a real firefight, that would have gotten you and your team killed. Yes, Major, the cadet replied, looking disappointed but determined. Won't happen again. Sklorth leaned closer to his aide, Sub-Ambassador Vertix, and whispered something. The aide nodded urgently. Captain Harrington, Sklorth said, his voice slightly higher than before. I was under the impression that this was an educational institution. It is, Lisa confirmed, one of our best. Yet you train your young to kill and be killed, he said, with such enthusiasm. Professor Carter stepped forward. Ambassador, we train them to defend themselves and others. The enthusiasm you see is for mastering difficult skills and working effectively as a team. I see, the alien said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Major Duncan approached the group and saluted. If you'd like, Ambassador, we can demonstrate some of our hand-to-hand combat techniques next. These are watered-down versions of what we teach our special operations forces. Watered down. Vertix repeated, his translator struggling with the idiom. Simplified, Duncan explained. The real techniques are more effective. Sklorth's already pale blue skin seemed to lose more color. That will not be necessary, Major. I believe we have seen enough physical demonstrations for now. Lisa noticed the growing discomfort of the alien delegation and intervened. Perhaps we should move on to the Psychological Assessment Center. Dr. Samuel Brooks is waiting to explain how we evaluate and build mental resilience in our cadets. Mental resilience, Sklorth repeated, seeming slightly relieved. Yes, that sounds less physical. As they left the Combat Simulation Center, Sub-Ambassador Vertix pulled Sklorth aside and spoke urgently in their native language. Though Lisa couldn't understand the words, the concern in their voices was clear. Is everything all right, Ambassador? She asked. Yes, Captain, Sklorth replied too quickly. My aide was merely suggesting that we might need to adjust our assessment parameters for your species. You are not what we expected. Lisa smiled politely. We get that a lot. The afternoon sun beat down on the outdoor training area as the alien delegation arrived at the edge of the obstacle course. Several cadets in gray t-shirts and shorts were already warming up, their bodies moving with easy grace despite the heat. This is our standard obstacle course, Lieutenant Alex Rodriguez explained. All cadets must complete it regularly as part of their physical assessment. Ambassador Sklorth studied the various structures with growing concern. Tall wooden walls, rope climbs, mud pits, and barbed wire stretched across the field. To human eyes, it looked challenging but normal. To the ambassador, it resembled a torture ground. You expect your students to climb these structures without assistance devices? He asked, his translator unable to hide his disbelief. Yes, sir, Cadet John Miller answered as he approached and stood at attention. Permission to begin the demonstration, Lieutenant. After receiving a nod from Rodriguez, Miller turned to his fellow cadet. Ready, Washington. Cadet Nickel Washington grinned. Born ready, Miller. Captain Lisa Harrington leaned closer to Sklorth. Cadets Miller and Washington are two of our top performers. This is a moderate course by our standards. Moderate, the ambassador repeated softly. At a signal from their instructor, the cadets took off running toward the first obstacle, a 10-foot wall. Without slowing down, they leaped up, grabbed the top edge, and pulled themselves over with powerful arm movements. Sklorth's aides made distressed clicking sounds as they watched. How much does gravity affect your species, Ambassador? Sergeant Olivia Grant asked conversationally. We evolved on a world with approximately 70% of Earth's gravity, Sklorth answered, his eyes never leaving the cadets as they swung across a mud pit using only a rope. Our skeletal structure is less dense than yours. The demonstration continued as the cadets navigated through barbed wire on their stomachs, climbed cargo nets, and balanced on narrow beams. Their breathing grew heavier, but their pace barely slowed. And this is done voluntarily, one of the alien aides asked. Of course, Dean Peterson replied. Physical fitness is essential for military readiness. Halfway through the course, Cadet Washington slipped while climbing a rope. She fell about 6 feet, landing hard on her side. Lissa noticed Sklorth's body tense, as if expecting tragedy. Instead, Washington stood up, brushed dirt from a bloody scrape on her arm, and climbed back onto the rope. Should she not receive medical attention? Sklorth asked, his voice higher than before. For that, Lieutenant Rodriguez looked genuinely confused. It's just a scratch. Walk it off, Washington, called another cadet from the sidelines. The alien delegation's translator devices picked up the phrase, causing them to exchange what appeared to be alarmed glances. In Arcturian education centers, Sklorth said slowly, a student who suffers even minor physical damage receives immediate medical treatment and rest. Different approaches, Lissa reminded him diplomatically. As the cadets finished the course, they were sweating heavily but smiling. They jogged over to where the group stood watching. "Time?" Miller asked. 8 minutes, 12 seconds, their instructor answered. "Not your best." "We'll do better next time, sir," Washington replied, seemingly unbothered by the criticism, or the blood now dried on her arm. Sklorth stared at the female cadet's injury, then at her face. "You are not in pain." Washington looked down at her arm as if noticing the scrape for the first time. "This? No, sir. Had worse falling off my bike as a kid." One of the alien aides whispered urgently to Sklorth in their native language. The ambassador nodded slowly. "Captain Harrington," he said, turning to Lisa. "My understanding was that this academy focuses on intellectual and strategic education." "It does," she confirmed. "This physical training is just one component. Next, we'll observe a tactical exercise that demonstrates teamwork and strategic thinking. And will this tactical exercise also involve physical exertion?" Sklorth asked. Lisa smiled. "Of course. The mind and body work together in combat situations." The ambassador's long fingers twitched slightly. "I see. Please, lead the way." As they walked toward the next demonstration area, Lisa overheard one of the aides say to Sklorth, "They consider this minimal physical damage. What do they consider severe?" The ambassador did not respond, but his steps became notably more hesitant. The morning sun shone brightly over the historic buildings of West Point Military Academy. Captain Lisa Harrington watched as Ambassador Sklorth and his 3 aides stepped carefully from their transport vehicle. The aliens moved with slow, deliberate steps, clearly struggling with Earth's gravity. "Ambassador, welcome to West Point," said Dean Richard Peterson, extending his hand in greeting. Sklorth stared at the offered hand for a moment before remembering the human custom. He reached out with his 4-fingered hand and gave a weak shake. "Thank you for allowing us to observe your training methods." The way he said "training methods" made it sound like a distasteful phrase. Lisa noticed several cadets standing at attention nearby exchange quick glances. "Lieutenant Alex Rodriguez will be your guide for the historical portion of our tour," Dean Peterson said, gesturing to a young officer who stepped forward and saluted. "This way, Ambassador," Alex said. "We'll begin with our museum, which documents the Academy's 300-year history." As they walked, Sklorth's large eyes took in everything. "Your buildings use such heavy materials," he commented. "On our world, we prefer lightweight crystal and synthetic fabrics." "These buildings have stood for centuries," Alex replied. "They were built to last." Inside the Academy Museum, the alien delegation moved slowly past displays of old uniforms, weapons, and photographs. Sklorth paused before a large painting of cadets charging up a hill during a historical battle. "You display images of violence proudly," he observed. "Fascinating cultural difference. In Arcturian history museums, we only show our scientific and artistic achievements." One of his aides made a soft clicking sound that their translators didn't convert. The aliens exchanged looks that Lisa interpreted as disapproval. "Military history is an important part of human history," Alex explained. "We learn from past conflicts to improve our strategies and, hopefully, prevent future wars." "Yet you continue to train for war," Sklorth said. Curious. The tour continued to a large dining hall where Academy staff had prepared a formal lunch. Sergeant Major Olivia Grant, the highest-ranking non-commissioned officer at the Academy, joined them at the main table. "It's an honor to meet representatives from another world," she said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had served for 20 years. Sklorth settled carefully into a reinforced chair that had been brought specially for the occasion. "Your academy is impressive in its dedication to physical discipline." "Thank you," Dean Peterson replied. "We believe in developing both mind and body." The alien ambassador picked at his specially prepared meal. "On Arcturus, we focus exclusively on mental development. Physical exertion is considered unnecessary with our technology." "Different approaches for different species," Lisa said diplomatically. "Indeed," Sklorth put down his eating utensil. Though I must admit, your planet's high gravity has clearly shaped your species in remarkable ways. You are also robust. Sergeant Grant's eyebrow raised slightly at what seemed like a backhanded compliment. Ambassador, Lisa said quickly, after lunch, we'll observe some of the physical training our cadets undergo. Yes, I am most curious about this aspect of your education, Sklorth replied. Our intelligence reports suggest that humans can endure physical stresses that would be fatal to my kind. We just do what needs to be done, Sergeant Grant said simply. As they finished their meal, one of Sklorth's aides leaned close to him and whispered something. The ambassador nodded and turned to Lisa. Captain Harrington, my aide Vertix has been researching your academy's training methods. He has questions about what you call Hell Week. This sounds most concerning. Lisa exchanged a quick look with Dean Peterson. That's a small part of Special Forces training, not standard for all cadets. It's designed to test mental resilience under extreme conditions. You intentionally create hell as a test. Sklorth's large eyes widened further. Fascinating. As they left the dining hall, Lisa overheard one cadet whisper to another, "Wait till they see the obstacle course demonstration." The alien ambassador turned his head sharply at the comment, his translator clearly picking up the words. For the first time, Lisa saw what looked like genuine concern cross the alien's face. The smooth silver ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, its hull glowing faintly as it cut through the morning clouds. Inside, Ambassador Sklorth adjusted his breathing apparatus and tried to calm his nerves. This was his first visit to the human homeworld, a planet many in the Arcturian Confederation considered primitive and dangerous. "We will land in 5 minutes, Ambassador," said his pilot through the ship's communication system. "Human delegates are waiting to receive you." Sklorth's 4 long fingers tapped against the viewing screen. The Arcturian stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a thin, almost fragile frame. His skin was pale blue, and his large eyes could see spectrums of light invisible to humans. As the head representative of the Galactic Council's Evaluation Committee, he had visited 26 different worlds, but none had filled him with such unease as Earth. The ship landed softly on the designated pad at the United Nations Space Command Headquarters in New York. A small group of humans waited on the landing pad, dressed in formal military attire. Captain Lisa Harrington stood at attention as the alien ship's door opened with a soft hiss. She had been selected for this assignment because of her diplomatic experience and her distinguished service during the Mars conflict 3 years ago. At 35, she was one of the youngest officers to reach her rank. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Sklorth," she said as the alien descended the ramp. "I'm Captain Harrington, your liaison during your stay." The alien towered over her, his head tilted slightly as he studied her face. "Your gravity is uncomfortable," he said, his words translated through a small device on his chest. "But I am pleased to begin our evaluation." Lisa nodded politely. "We're honored that the Galactic Council has finally agreed to consider Earth's application for membership." Behind her, General Frank Martinez shifted his weight. He had opposed this visit from the beginning, arguing that humans shouldn't have to prove themselves to aliens who had ignored Earth for decades. "My mission is to evaluate your species' level of advancement and determine if humans are ready to join galactic society," Sklorth explained. "I understand you have arranged for me to observe your military training facilities." "Yes, Ambassador. We'll be visiting West Point Military Academy tomorrow," Lisa replied. "It's one of our oldest and most prestigious institutions." Sklorth's large eyes blinked slowly. "In the Arcturian Confederation, we have evolved beyond the need for military academies. We settled our conflicts through intellectual means centuries ago." General Martinez stepped forward. "With all due respect, Ambassador, not every species in the galaxy is as peaceful as yours. We maintain our military to protect our people." The alien's translator paused briefly before conveying his response. "Of course, each species must adapt to its circumstances. I look forward to understanding yours better. After the formal greeting ceremony, Lisa escorted Sklorth to his quarters in the diplomatic wing. The rooms had been specially adjusted to match Arcturian atmospheric preferences. Tomorrow's visit to West Point has been carefully planned, Lisa explained. Dean Richard Peterson will personally guide your tour of the facilities. I am particularly interested in understanding how humans train for combat, Sklorth said. Our intelligence suggests your species has an unusual tolerance for physical hardship. Lisa smiled slightly. We're adaptable, Ambassador. So I've heard, the alien said, his voice carrying a hint of what might have been concern. My species believes that understanding the culture's approach to conflict reveals much about their true nature. Later that evening, Lisa met with General Martinez and Dean Peterson via secure video call to review the next day's schedule. Remember, we need this to go well, Martinez said. Earth needs allies in the galactic community. Peterson nodded. We'll show the Ambassador our best and brightest cadets. Nothing too intense. Just be yourselves, Lisa said. The Ambassador wants to see who we really are. What none of them realized was that who we really are would soon prove far more terrifying to the alien visitor than any of them could imagine.